Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the 147th episode of Stories of Service, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. And I'm the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today I have another amazing guest. I always love it when I have guests that honor the military and are working with the military, but not necessarily in the military. And Scott Manthorne, you definitely fall under that category. How are you doing today?
I am great. Thank you. Jazz hands going on today.
Jazz hands. Very exciting. Well, I am so happy to have you on the show. I first got acquainted with you when you and I connected on LinkedIn, and I believe we have a mutual friend, Suzanne Lesko, and she's actually in your book, The Military Effect, which we will talk about. And I just so enjoyed watching what you were doing with working with the military and your networking and some of the ways in which you've described how we can better connect with others. And as I say in my show notes, when I was first talking to you, I knew that you were somebody that wasn't just a schmoozer and just doing this to do it, but you also worked hard to build those genuine relationships. And it was immediately apparent as soon as we got off the call. I saw there all these emails in my inbox connecting me with other people. So I knew you walked the walk and not didn't just talk the talk. So
yeah, that's awesome. We used to have a saying for people that would do that. We called them the schmoozer, the boozer, and the cruiser.
And, okay, I get the boozer. What's the cruiser?
Well, I mean, listen, you do the schmoozing, you do the boozing, and then you do the cruising. So it's like it's the 3-step process of running in and out of a room, and that's about your capability when it comes to networking. So
yeah,
booze, cruise, and lose.
Yeah. Well, and I think people can tell that. I can tell you that I don't do a whole lot of networking events. I'm going to be doing more of them once I go stateside. But being at those, I always wind up having amazing conversations. Like today, we had a barbecue at my work. And the next thing I know, I'm talking to this wonderful UK gentleman who's also very civically involved. And then our commander, our 3-star comes and sits with us. And we started just having this amazing conversation about Russia, Ukraine, about politics. It was so enlightening, and all because I went to a networking event. And so you just never know how those connections are going to happen.
You don't. I was driving from Maine to North Carolina a few days ago. I'm at a rest stop, and I see this car, and it's a Mercedes class, and they have it wrapped with the name of a company. And I'm like, that's fascinating. Like, I've never seen that before. And the gentleman was well dressed. He comes up, and I mentioned nice vehicle, and then I'm like, you in this business? He comes over. We start talking, and of course he goes right to his pocket and he hands me a card, which is fine. And then he asks me for mine. Well, I don't have business cards, and I have not had business cards forever. And I don't have a QR code on my phone. And like, I don't have any of that stuff. Like, you can go online and find me right now if you want. And he took a snapshot of my book because he was not a veteran. And I'm like, I'm sorry, if I'm giving a book away, you've got to be an active duty service or veteran. Otherwise, you can go buy it on Amazon. And so I figured that was the end of him. And I think we exchanged phone numbers, and lo and behold, he sent me a text about 2 days later. I sent him an email back, I think the day before yesterday. So we'll see if he responds. But I wanted to put the onus on that individual to take the leap for networking, because people tend to pass a card and think the card is going to activate some special wand of business. And I'm like, you can give all day long, okay? But you really want to get a card. Giving a card is an irrelevant move on most part. It's kind of an old school mentality that I'm not sure why people hold on to it. But
right.
Where does a card go after you get it? It goes in usually one of 2 places: a round file called a trash can, or it goes in a collective circle with a rubber band on it into a box or into a drawer. So what's the point? I mean, how many people have spinning Rolodexes? So that it's not going on that.
No.
So it's something that just takes up space and takes down trees, and I don't really get it.
No. And I think that with enough of the social media channels that exist out there, like you said, and with phone numbers and text messages, there are other ways to connect with each other. And what I find is that if you don't make that first move to connect with someone, you never know what missed opportunity that you would have had you just taken that step to try to make that effort and build that bridge with somebody that you just would never know otherwise. And it does take time. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And let me read a little bit about you, Scott. There wasn't a lot that you gave me, which I thought was very interesting too, because if we look at the back of the Network Effect, which was your first book right here, there's an extensive biography in here. And if you don't mind, I definitely want to read a little bit about you from
Sure,
this,
sure.
because I think it's just really important people see where you're coming from, and not just what you're doing now with the military. So you were the founder, or you are the founder of InsideCircle.net, a private global networking organization that specializes in connecting high performance entrepreneurs and CEOs. Since 1992, your efforts have helped to move over 500 million in new sales across every continent in the world. Your diverse footprint includes a rich history in the professional sports sector, where you launched two niche organizations, Athletics and Executives in All Sports United, and A&E is focused on bringing retired professional athletes closer to business, which I thought was really interesting, because now what you're doing is you're bringing military closer to business. So All Sports United was a think tank powering the nonprofit initiatives of the world's top sport properties, organizations, and athletes. So I thought that was really interesting. So I think to start the call, I would like to know, and I think I read about it in here, but that your father was also in the networking business. And so I'd like to know a little bit about where you got this kind of start of how to connect and bridge different parties together.
Well, I've been accused of being a networker all the way back to high school and probably middle school. So I think just in the social aspect of life, a lot of us find a place where we belong. Um,
Hmm.
am not tall, was not gifted athletically, uh, not really a fit for any sports team whatsoever. So I was more of a manager, more of the social engine around those groups. And that
Hmm.
was kind of the natural start of my networking, where I networked across peer groups in high school and even classes, from freshman to senior. So as I think back about that, I'm like, I was doing it back then. And I don't know why. It was just my proclivity to want to connect to as many different types of people as possible.
And I think I read in your book here too that your father would take you to like industry trade shows and things like that, where you would have to learn how to just interact with people that you didn't know anything about.
Yeah, so somewhere in there, there's definitely conversations about that. My dad was a little bit more of a blue collar worker, but he was very involved in a nonprofit philanthropic organization called the JCs, which is like the Junior Chamber of Commerce in the United
Yes.
States. And so through that, there was a lot of service discussions. I was part of the growing up process with the Boy Scouts and that kind of stuff. And so I think by nature, you're always engaged in different levels of interaction. I mean, as I think back to the troops were BNI, the troops were the first networking group that I was part of. So
Mhm.
almost everything you do growing up has some form of networking in it. You just think of it in a different way.
Mhm. And what do you think it was about networking and connecting different people and different parties together that fascinated you so much? What was it about it that interested you?
You know, um, this is where it's interesting with the military so many years later. I mean, I enjoyed the order of interaction. When I get into college, I took on roles of leadership within the fraternal system. So I really enjoyed kind of putting things into a systematic place and moving communication forward in a way that had some outcome to it.
Mhm.
And the basis of networking is really that. I mean, there's a starting point and there's a finishing point and there's all the stuff in the middle. And then for a
Mhm.
lot of people, there's a recycle because you just don't give away that network after you take advantage of it. You continue to build on it. So
And
science.
people Yeah, I was just gonna say, people sometimes think that networking is a dirty word too.
Hmm.
Like they take it out of context. And can you explain a little more about what you mean when you network?
I don't know why that word is so twisted, and we'll talk about this a little bit when we get into the veteran side of the equation. Um, it's a it's a tactic. It's just an adjective. It's a
Mhm.
descriptive term. It's like, haul an ass. I mean, it's a way that you say that you're doing something. Like, what do you want to call it? What else
Right.
can you call this? So
Mhm.
it's social interaction with a business. goal,
Right.
right?
It's creating an opportunity for
Mm,
people of like-minded interests
mm,
to come together for the goal of meeting an objective, and you have to create those opportunities, and you have to be present at those opportunities, and I think there's so many people who feel like networking is a dirty word or they don't wanna go, and how do you advise people who are very hesitant to build a network, or they're very hesitant to put themselves out there? Because I think it can be scary, to go, especially to networking events by yourself, where you don't know anybody and
mm.
you might feel isolated.
So what's interesting is in the book, I interviewed 87 people from 10 countries, and there was a lot of diversity in these stories. And
That's cool.
I knew several of them for several years. And one of them is a sports agent, um,
Mhm.
an attorney. Her first name is Alicia. People can go and find her last name in the book. But Alicia was in sports and entertainment, a very forward facing business model, and a full blown introvert. And I did not know this talking to her ever. And so the introvert that she is handles social situations by setting up key questions that can be asked without having to share anything about themselves. So she was very smart in getting into a circle of people, and people go right and just, what do you do, blah blah blah. When it would get to her, she would just ask a question, and she would have two or three in her head that she could ask that she knew would automatically stimulate people to speak. And so
That's so fascinating.
it's a great tact for an introvert to go into an uncomfortable situation and let the other side speak, because in the business world almost everyone wants to talk as much as you will let them. Okay, you can be a very very good networker by saying very very little.
Hmm. It's true. Just by asking questions and by listening.
I had a gentleman, his first name's Steven in the book, an exceptional networker, global business person, goes to these events, platform speakers or a panel or whatever, and after it's over, people want to go up towards the stage and ask questions, right, of the panel. So he would go, and he does this. He'll go up with a group of people, 10, 15, who are standing there all wanting to ask this question, kind of surrounding the speaker. And he would always wait to be the last one to ask the question or close to the end. And I said, "Why are you doing that?" And he said, "Because I could hear from the speaker what he really was looking for from all of these questions that were being posed, so that when I went to him, I had a question of purpose that was going to help him answer all of these things that had been discussed. And most of those people prior were just falling over themselves, asking ridiculous things."
Right, and probably a lot of them were just relate I mean, and it's natural that we all do this. I do it, and I'm sure you might do it to some degrees. We relate someone else's story to something that happened in our lives, and it's our way of kind of connecting with them, but it's also our way of making that story meaningful to us. So I'm sure a lot of the people that go up to a speaker after an event are also relating to their story or whatever they shared with their own story of something that they went through. And so to have somebody kind of sit back in the back and wait and see what some of the questions that are being asked, that's really powerful because it's showing that they're taking that extra step.
Well, there's connection and commonality, right?
Mm.
So, hey, we both went to this college. Hey, we both like yellow bugs. Hey,
Mhm.
we're both going to get Mexican afterwards. I mean, there's connection and commonality, all right? And a lot of people think that they get business because they're good. They get business because they connected at a level that that other person wanted them to connect at. Usually you keep business because of competency.
Right.
You usually get business because of connection.
Oh, I love that. That's so true because you can't even get your foot in the door if you can't connect.
That's correct. And so your validity comes in the service model. Your validity comes in the delivery. Okay.
Mhm.
Your renewal, if you're doing some kind of, regular renewal thing, or you're upselling, or you're cross-selling, you're extending, that comes from whether you're good or not. Okay.
Mhm.
But
Sure.
to think that you're going in and competing against this person or that person, very rare. upper level sales, upper level competitive things where you're doing RFPs and things that is, structured in nature, sure. But if, Teresa and Scott are standing together and they're going to go talk to Tom and they're both trying to get Tom to hire him for a speaking gig, do you think Tom can really disseminate the difference between the two people?
No.
No. Okay. There's a connection somewhere. And you don't know what it's going to be. It could be the way you dress, the way you talk. It could be 100 different things. So it's almost who's first to the finish line in finding commonality. And this is one of the secrets to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is like the greatest dictionary created on people. And most people looked at LinkedIn as this really weird database engine, and they're cranking out stuff and they're following people. I'm like, if you go to a LinkedIn profile and you drop to the bottom of the profile, at the bottom, you're going to find hobbies, interests, where they went to high school. All the best stuff is buried at the bottom, right? Some of it might be buried in the news feed because they just got this award or they got, recognition. But the meat and potatoes of the networking is right there staring you in the face. And it's the greatest opening line there is. It's like, Teresa, nice to meet you. I heard you received this award, or you went to Mount Blue, or like you just start out by throwing a question out and they're going to respond to it. They're automatically completely going off the grid. They're dropping their guard and they're excited to talk about something that's important in their life.
So true. So true. It reminds me of when I had Rich Cardona on. He's a gentleman that works with people who are starting podcasts. He's a podcast coach. He's had his own very successful podcast. And he said, if you really want to be that interviewer that stands above the rest, I'll never forget what he said. You're the one who's like going back like years before the guest was even famous, let's say, if you have the real high profile guests, and you might bring up some obscure movie part that they were in. You might bring up something that they had no idea that many people had even watched or seen. I did that with Woody Harrelson. I'll never forget it. And I can't even remember the name of the movie, but he came on one of our aircraft carriers. And I remember I had about a 5-10 second interaction with him as he was walking. He was in the Admiral's passageway, and he was walking out to the flight deck. And I just passed him by and I said, "Oh my gosh, you were so great in X movie." And he looked at me and he's like, "People actually watch that movie?" And, and I just remember like, oh, that's kind of cool that's because I'm into kind of quirky, strange shows. And so that's what I remembered him in.
Sure. You talk about that move on White Man Can't Jump or something, and he's all over it.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a call today with a professional sports team, and I was looking for an introduction to another professional sports team. I needed a really important lateral introduction. And it was framed in the conversation, but the conversation really revolved around this person's 65-mile bike ride tomorrow to the beach in Rhode Island. So we probably talked about half the call about this bike ride, why you're doing it, getting ready for this, marathon. And I knew something about it. And, I could just see their face lighting up. I'm like, I'm going down this pathway until the call's over. And that's how the call ended. I'm like, enjoy the weekend at the beach and a great bike ride, and dropped a quick email afterwards and made sure I brought that up and reminded them that I was looking for the intro. Almost immediately, I get the email, with the high level contact who I happen to know, but I don't say forgot, but in my universe, it was like, oh yeah, I remember this name from 8 years ago. We haven't spoken since, and I wouldn't have connected the dots without them. But the best calls are the calls that are not about business, but are.
Right. Or business comes up, but it doesn't. It just, like I said, it was so similar to what just happened just now as I was coming. So it's funny that as I'm coming to a podcast to talk about networking, I was networking and not even really realizing I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll eat my dinner at this free barbecue after our awards ceremony. And I find myself there and I'm like, and I'm always a little awkward at these things. I will say I'm probably not a big master networker in groups or any of those things, but I always wind up after a while, just sitting next to someone interesting or just being at the right place at the right time. And then you just never know. You have these just amazing conversations that you'd never have otherwise. And
Yeah.
that's the serendipity of it.
Yeah. And so let's break networking down to its simplest form. Okay. Whether it's at the after church service at the barbecue, whether it's at the restaurant, whether it's randomly walking somewhere, networking is people. Networking is opening a discussion and listening, hopefully, to things. You network trying to find that next restaurant. You network for tips on that cruise. You network to get your kid into
Mhm.
you are networking all the time. It's the same as sales. Oh, I don't sell. Yeah, you do. You're always selling everything you do. Okay. I need to find that dentist. Where's that step class? Everything is networking. Okay.
Mhm.
So it just comes down to where your comfort level lies in how you ask for information. And God
Mhm.
gave us two of these and one of these for a reason. Listen twice as much as you speak. Okay. If you want to network better, talk less.
If you want to network better, talk less. I love that. It's
Yeah.
so true because the person that's just standing there smiling sometimes might feel really awkward in listening, but they're probably the person that's getting sometimes some of the best connections because they're just giving people that opportunity to be heard and to feel valued.
If I'm at a business event, I'm taking notes. I may
Mhm.
take them on my phone. I'm not taking in my head. Okay. I'm taking notes. I'm here to gain information. Okay.
Right.
And if someone asks me why my head's down, I'm taking notes right now. Okay. You're saying something that I need to research. You
Mhm.
mentioned something I didn't know about. You said somewhere that I want to get to. There's all this intel that's flying around this little circle. And when you think about multiplication of connections and access, small rooms have big access. Okay. Even the poorest networker probably has 100 people in their network. Okay. So if I have a circle of 5 people, I've got 500 connection points that I can get to. Now I have to figure out how, why, when, right? There's a lot of reasons and ways that you're going to find your way through networks, and that's a different discussion. But it's fascinating because so many people start from 0 to get to 100. I'm like, you should really start from 90 to get to 100, but why, whatever. If you want to start at scratch with your
Mhm.
networking, more power to you. I'm starting at 90. Okay.
Right.
I get a very little step to get to 100. Okay.
Right, and that's and when I get what you're saying, it's utilizing the networks that you already have that you don't take advantage of to build on the networks that you could be having, that are even larger. And speaking of networks, we do have a couple people who've joined us. I know you know them. Dave Sanderson says, "Great to hear you both and Scott is a master. Great to hear from you both. And Scott is a master about how to put people in their stories together." And then Christanthe, she is the Lineman podcast
Hmm.
lady. She says, "Scott, Teresa, great people doing great things for our country. Thank you. It's great to hear from you, by the way." So
That's awesome.
it's great to see that we have so many mutual friends. That was also really interesting as we got to know one another that you and I have a lot of the same network of people around us. And for you, you were in sports, you were in the business world with like kind of the high net worth clients. What made you decide and how did you transition from that over to the military space?
Well, there's a little bit of the story in the back of the book, but it really came from not knowing anything about this vertical. And I touched all the others in the world, and it rattled in my head over the years. I'm like, what's going on over here? But I'm busy over here.
Right.
And I had a break in business, and I just decided to reach out to Suzanne, who I'd known for about 7 years, and thought of her as a think tank person, consulting type person. That she was my first call.
Mhm.
Uh, and then I reached out to an old fraternity brother who is a JAG Corps and is now the mayor of Hermosa Beach, California. Those two people started a quick pathway to other people that were entrepreneurs and veterans. And I quickly realized this is bigger than I think it is. There must be more people here. And in less than 75 days, that that effort, along with asking Dave Sanderson and some other people for access points, led to the 50 authors of the book and led to about another 50 relationships within the military space. So
Fascinating.
it started from scratch, really. And I think it's an unbelievable example of the power of networking, because this simple exercise is leading to immeasurable opportunities, not just for me, but for all of these men and women that I've come in contact with, and all of the people that we still have yet to meet. So
That's
it's
amazing.
an unbelievable shift.
Yeah. So the military effect, for those of you who are not familiar with it, and I think what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and share the screen so that you guys can see a little bit about the book and about the project, because I think it's amazing. It's such a groundbreaking effort. I've never seen anything like it. So here's the website. Here you see the little Amazon #1 bestseller, The Military Effect. So tell me a little bit about this book, and what did you find all these people through Suzanne, through a friend of a friend, and then it just sort of snowballed, or how did this whole book get put together?
I think it's a rough number, but there's about 18 individuals that help source the book.
Got it.
They're all mentioned in the book by name. So those 18 helped me to find the 50 men and women that actually participated in this book. All right. And there's also five endorsers that are all higher level, like retired 3-star Lori Reynolds from the Marines.
Right here, and Johnny Michel, Brigadier General, U.S. Air Force, and
Right.
others. Yeah.
The 50 men and women are from 5 of the 6 branches. Space Force was excluded partially by fault. I didn't know it existed. I'm a civilian. I didn't even know it was there. The logic to the book being equally split between men and women is a purely personal decision. I have a daughter. I'm a daddy's girl. I wanted to equally represent women and men in the book. That's why I
Mhm.
did it. The rest of it was really a balancing act between how many numbers wise I could put in each one.
I know
And
50 is a lot. That is a lot of authors, but it's
yeah,
great because it's such a variety.
yeah, and it's, there's 24 ladies and 26 men, and the service rank is, from basic all the way up to colonel, and the time of service is about 4 years to 34 years. So there's a wide diversity here of talent and length, and then the backgrounds are just unbelievable.
Oh,
I
they
mean,
are.
none of the 50 stories are the same as to why they got in. None of the 50 stories are the same as to how they got out. None of the 50 stories are the same as to where they are now. And each one of them has, like, on top of that, their own lessons that they taught. Each one of them on top of that has their own impression of the military effect, like what that means in their life. So it's a really cool book with so many different ways to see what's going on in this world, and something will resonate.
Right,
That
and
can
that's
hit.
what I liked about it too, is that the book has also a very defined structure of sort of who they are, what inspired them to join, what were some of the lessons that they took away from service. So as you're reading through it, you sort of have there's a system to it. Like you said, you're a systems guy.
Yeah, and this is all feedback from the authors. So I decided to write the book in a system way that I felt
Mhm.
would resonate with the branches, right? So that you can flip from section to section, because you know the transition is the same. It's a section each
Right.
50 stories. That was kind of cool to build that, but that was a decision that was made with a handful of the authors. The authors had a huge lift in this book. I mean, yes, I wrote it, but we wrote it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of words in there that came straight from their mouth, straight to the paper, and then we determined together what the end result of the story would be for each one of them.
And what I like about it, like you said, is that you can flip to any of the stories. You don't have to read the book in a particular order either. You can flip to just a few, or if you've just got a couple minutes and you just want to be inspired by somebody's journey, you can flip it, and you've got about 2 or 3 pages of a story, and then you can go to the next veteran or the next
Yeah.
military member. And I've just never seen someone do something like that, or put together the stories like that.
It was a journey to create it in this manner. I wanted it to be an easy read for civilians, which really is the top focus area of this book. There's so many great books written by veterans over the years. I'm not really adding to that library, but this book is something where the civilians can really resonate with these men and women and say, okay, you grew up like I did. You went in a different direction. Now you're where I am. We're the
Hmm.
same, we're not different, right? And so we need that commonality here in this country so that the two sides of the world connect and collaborate more. I think that there's a huge divide between the veteran community and the mainstream business community. Part of that's by design, part of that's by fault, part of that's by lack of understanding. Part of that is who knows. I mean, you're talking about 30 million people in the United States. This is a big group to integrate.
And less than 1% who have served. And if they don't know somebody who was in the military, they have preconceived notions about what serving in the military is about. So they might know a little bit about the Air Force, or they might know a little bit about one particular person or someone who has served in a combat zone, for an example, versus someone who has never served in a combat zone. There's just so much variety and so many different occupations within the military. There's creative fields like mine. There's medical, there's lawyers, doctors. And people sometimes have this one view of the military, which is an infantry warfighter. And I think we need to shatter that paradigm, because there's so many different types of people who serve.
Well, there's a number of ways that networking will solve that, right? So networking is opening up conversations. All right.
Hmm.
And networking is as diverse as you want it to be or as exclusive as you want it to be. So you'll hear stories all through this book of networking. I mean, it's mentioned a lot inside of the military effect by a lot of the people. One of your counterparts, April, who's at the front of the book, she was a broadcaster on Air Force
Air
TV,
Force. Yeah.
and she talks pretty candidly about her networking experience through her journey and then where she is now. So servicemen and women are exceptional at networking, but they don't think they are because they hear a word and it's not associated with something that they're familiar with. I don't know that word. Well, you do know that word. You're just thinking of it in a different framework, right?
Hmm.
Because this is really a mission
It
with
is.
parameters and a defined theater and all the components that you would have within whatever system you came out of in the military. And if you break it down that way, it's really clear what you're doing.
Hmm.
But traditionally, the men and women leave that behind and then try to operate in a new theater. All right, I'm in a civilian now. Well, how the heck does civilians work? How do they do this? And I'm like, why are you not just taking this map and laying it over where you are standing right now? Because if you do, you're going to clearly see the peak. You're going to clearly see the intelligence. You're going to clearly see the supply line. You're going to clearly see all of these things. And then it's going to make your networking much more efficient.
That's so true. And I think that the ones that do it really well find a way to engage with fellow people who are in the craft or in the field that they are wanting to join. So, for an example, if somebody wants to be involved as a community leader at the local level and they are looking to go into an entrepreneurial pursuit, join a chamber of commerce type related kind of thing. If you were looking to do something in the civic arena, do something with a Rotary Club. I think that sometimes people, as veterans especially, they get out, and it's like they're looking to try to find that same sense of camaraderie and teamwork, and they see that they're going to have to work for it. It's not going to just come to them like it does when we go on deployment. We go on deployment, it's like you've got this ready-made support system or these people around you all the time. Well, that isn't going to happen when you get out. And I can see for some people that it seems like it's somewhat isolating for them because they've just never had to do that. So, I mean, is that what you've seen?
Sure, but use me as an example because I'm a fairly decent operator at networking, right? But what I just did, I started with 2.
Yeah.
Just start with 2. Okay, that's what I did, right?
Right. Yeah.
And now I can't quantify the size of this network I have within the military infrastructure. I already cannot tell you how big it is. It's really big, right? But I started with 2. Okay, so networking is as hard and as complicated as you want to make it. All right. And you don't have to be everything to everyone. And you don't have to be an introvert and an extrovert or an ambivert. You can be whatever works for you. All
Right.
right. And especially with this horrible thing, the pandemic we had, which allows now for virtual so much to take place. You have the safety of your private residence and a lot of opportunities to network. I can network without this camera on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can network without this audio on. Okay. I can be as quiet as I want to be, and I can still move at a speed that I choose because I have open access to contacts. If you feel the social nature of walking into a room, yeah, there's a different set of parameters that you're going to need to deal with. How much different is it than I'm going to the beach today? Well, you better bring a bathing suit. Okay. I'm going into a business room. Well, you better bring this. But
Right.
at the base level of the day, if I'm having lunch, I'm having lunch. If I'm traveling, I'm packing it. If I'm not, I'm where I am. And I love LinkedIn because it is the great equalizer in networking.
It is. When you see a general or an admiral engaging in the same way that you'd see a junior enlisted person, it really does, like you say, democratize the ways in which people can put out messages. And that is one of the benefits. I mean, because people love to talk about all the drawbacks, but one of the benefits of social media is that people who can build a good network are not bound by rank or position. That they're just bound by their own, like you say, limitations on what they think they can achieve in this space. And I think that one of the things that has helped me is that you genuinely have to want to connect with people and relate and see commonality. If all we're focused on is our differences, well, we're never going to get anywhere. And I have found the more that I focus on my similarities with people, the further I get with my own personal networking, because we all have differences. That's life. We're all going to disagree. But I'm encouraged and I'm actually very positive about the direction that our nation is going. Even with all this crap, the stuff that we're hearing in the political world and all this divisiveness, I don't think we are as divisive as people think we are. I don't.
That's a conversation for another podcast. But I'm going to say that networking will surprise even the person who knows it the least. This guy right here has built over 95% of his network virtually. This guy, me, virtually. I kid you not. From 2005 to 2019, I was in the state of Maine, in a small town, raising a daughter, coaching middle school, sports, and networking on LinkedIn and Zoom and email and phone. I was not traveling the country. I was not in the conference space. The only time I held events is when I personally put them on, which was usually once a year. So you can build a massively powerful network by never leaving your chair if you choose to.
And that's powerful because there's a lot of people that will tell you, "Oh, you've got to do face to face. You don't really connect with people unless you're doing face to face." Well, I'm here to say I've been doing a podcast with 147 guests with no face to face, and I've built all these relationships that maybe I'll hopefully see some of them at the Military Influencer Conference. But even if I don't, I'm grateful for the friends that I've made and the people that continue to tune into the show and will hear these conversations either through their audio only. However, I think it's great. And I think that there's still benefit to that. And when people tell me that, oh, well, you're not doing enough face to face, I say, well, no, there are other ways to connect too, and they're just as meaningful.
So of the 55 people in my book, the 5 endorsers and the 50 authors, I met 2 before the book went to print.
Wow.
Okay. 2. Now, people are like, "Are you going on a book tour?" I'm not going on a book tour. I'm going on an author's tour. So I'm meeting the authors around the country now, and that's my personal choice. I wanna go see them and meet them.
That's
So
so cool.
I'm not going to the Barnes& and Noble to sign books. I'm going to the friend's house in Enola, Pennsylvania to meet them in person.
Yeah, and have a
Alright?
conversation because you're invested. I love it.
Right?
I love it.
And so the people that first of all, what do they say? They say like something like, "Pay attention." Well, or let me rephrase this. When someone gives you an opinion, consider the source.
Yes.
Okay. So usually inept or moderately successful networkers will tell you got to be in a room. Okay. The higher you go up the food chain, you first of all, they're never there. You have to ask them that question. All right. And the best in class networkers, they go direct from relationships that they built over time in their own defined ways. Okay.
Mm,
I had one of the most robust networks in professional sports that anyone had ever seen. I was out once a year, maybe twice. I did
mhm.
not do the conference world. I haven't been in a conference in 5 years. I couldn't tell you the last time I was at a conference or a room that I didn't create.
Right.
Now there's a lot of trial and error to this. There's numbers to this. You don't just become a great networker. You have to learn over time what works for you. You have to systematize it. And I say to people, if you don't treat your network like an asset, it won't perform like one.
Yeah.
Okay. And now this is getting into the high level side where you pie chart your network. You look at if this piece is delivering. Why is this person still in my network? Why are they even here? And
Mm,
and a network is not LinkedIn. Okay. Your network is not the number of connections you have or your followers or whatever all those numbers are. Your network is the number of people you are having a consistent conversation with. And that
mm.
number is really small.
Yeah.
For
Well,
most
most
people,
yeah, you don't have time to have, I
no.
think, a ton of
For
those.
most people, the number falls below 40.
Mhm.
Okay. As you move up the food chain, it gets up into 100, maybe 150. After that, and Harvard did this study, your cognitive ability to manage relationships stops at 150. Okay.
Yeah.
So anything beyond that is really fluff.
Right.
Oh, well, that can't be true. I have 9,000 people on my phone. I don't care. Okay. Because only 130 are going to answer that phone, or you can only tell me something that's somewhat timely about 130 of those people. You have no idea what's going on
Mm,
with most of these people. You haven't talked to them. You're not connected. They are a database. So LinkedIn is a live database and it's a network. Okay.
and I think too, for me, what will help in a network is, like you said, a shared, I don't know, a shared product or a shared project together. So take my relationship with Parade Deck, and I'm sure, uh, Rico Player, he's amazing, and he's built this wonderful platform for military content creators to network with one another. But I was a part of Parade Deck before he came on board, and I started working with them to build my podcasts into blogs, and it's just become this ongoing relationship. I mean, I have, weekly emails back and forth with Jamie, their graphic designer and the one who actually puts together the blog, and then Rico and I go back and forth about ideas and other things. But it is an ongoing, I would consider a professional relationship that has just grown from where it was about a year ago, 2 years ago, to where it is today. But it's also based on the fact that we are mutually in the same cause together.
Hmm.
We're both much aligned on this idea that service members and veterans need a voice, and they need to have a public voice in everything, not just policy or advocacy in sort of what I like to focus on, but in any kind of arena that's this voice gets out there. And so I think that's also part of your network, is identifying those people within your circle of the things that you have projects on, or you have objectives in. This is the reason why I interview so many lawyers, because I'm so fascinated by policy, and I love learning about justice and how the justice system works, how we can pass a law, or enact a policy, or how we can advocate for something. And our lawyers are the teachers. I mean, they're the ones that are in the law every day,
Yeah.
understanding those systems.
Yeah. One of the things about the circle is that if the power goes down, if the electronics don't work, who are 8 people that I can kind of rely on to turn it back on? Now you can think about that from a business point of view, uh, spiritual point of view, whatever you want. But who are really the critical people in my world that I gel with, that are kind of
Right.
sitting in the same infrastructure, that have the same values. They respond, they communicate, they open doors. We're doing the same things shared back and forth. They've proved themselves to you and you to them. And it's super important to have diversity. And I used to put it out like sports entertainment, health, tech, real estate, finance. Like, and I would make sure that I have a best in class person in each one of those groups
That's smart.
so that I could get into each one of those verticals, you know. And I did that for a number of years. Now I'm at a point where pretty much every person that's in my circle is also in all of those circles. So I have like that multiplication, which was once 8, now it's times 8, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever the number is.
I have the same thing. I have 2 people that I talk to, one who monetizes his online brand, and so I talk to him a lot about monetization, and just he runs a public speaking organization. Let me grab my other camera, but you can probably still hear me. I had a feeling this was going to happen towards the end of the call,
You're good.
but I have another camera that I always go to when this happens. But what I was going to say is, yeah, there I am. I'm back. So I have him, the gentleman who the speaking organization. Then I have another one who has a very, very popular podcast with like more high net worth or thought leaders, and I bounce ideas off of him. Then I have a financial independence person, a person who I talk to about finances and other thing. Now I have a digital nomad who I met on my last cruise ship, who I'm probably going to have on my show, and she's amazing. She's my age and has decided to just travel the world and lives in Airbnbs and other places overseas, and just,
Yeah, that's this guy. Same thing.
I mean, and actually she rents directly from the property owners too, and
Yep.
sometimes bypasses the Airbnb, and is able to get just amazing.
Yep.
She tells me she lives in exotic locations overseas, sometimes less than 1,000 a month.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No question about it.
It's crazy. And was a, math teacher. She did all these other businesses, and then just said, she got to about her, I think she's in her late 40s like myself, and said, you know what, I'm just going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to blog and have my Facebook page.
How's that for networking? Because that's using networking for your own, enjoyment. And I spent a lot of time in Costa Rica, so networking inside of that country took a little bit of time. But now I have like this and I just got a text. I have this whole extended group of people that are always hitting me up about Costa Rica. It could be business, could be pleasure, it could be a combination, because of my network in Costa Rica, which is the people that own the properties, or the guy that drives the van, or it doesn't really matter. But I love talking about that. And I've been invited on trips, which I've gone on, because these people rely on me to help navigate them in a network model into the country.
Well, and I asked Chris, her name's Chris Gowling, and she has, oh gosh, a cup and a coffee. She's going to kill me if I don't get it right. But, coffee and a smile, or a smile and a coffee, or something like that. And I just met her on my last cruise that I went on Virgin. And she told me that what she does, she'll stay for about a month in a country, or a month and a half, go on like a Facebook group where they have expats, and she'll organize a meetup, like a coffee date.
Yep.
And that's how she has met so many of the people that she's now friends with from all over the world. And and she has detailed spreadsheets on how she's managed to save all this money and be able to do this. And she has it worked out, and she's single, no kids, and she has it worked out that she can do this for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And it's just I can't wait to have her on.
We should
She's just
we should
amazing
network
lady.
we should network her to my friend who's a digital nomad who's over in island off the coast of Thailand right now and doing the same thing. And I helped him kind of start his progression, and that's networking. So whoever's listening to this, there's a point to this, because networking comes in all forms and is not just about a transaction, and it's not just about this really myopic thing where I'm trying to get someone to listen to me. And if you don't think networking is fun, you don't understand networking.
I think it's great. I mean, I couldn't believe my husband found her. I mean, this is just a funny story. He found her on one of those Virgin cruise, like the name of our cruise, and then the dates we were going. So it was a Facebook group just for the people that were going to be on the cruise during
Which
that
I was
week.
on. I was on a Virgin cruise that did just that. So kudos to everybody who did that. Um,
Yeah.
I know we must be running close to the end on our time. Um, is there any like last minute question you have that's kind of interesting to you about either the book itself, or networking itself, or the veteran universe? I'd love to give you one more tidbit here before we bounce.
Sure, sure. I guess my closing question would be, what type of um, baby step can somebody take that says, I suck at networking. I hate it. I don't want to do it. Tell me one thing, leave us with one thing that people can do to get started.
I think the least evasive thing that someone can do is find a book that resonates with them on the topic, because
Like
that
the network effect.
what like the network effect. That is a real simple. It doesn't have to be my
Mhm.
book, but something
Right.
like that they resonate with, because it's the least evasive way to learn about a topic, right? That's where I would start. And from that, there'll be inspiration. I'm going to try this. I'm going to go there. I'm going to
Oh,
meet
yeah.
this person. I'm going to reach out, because everything will snowball on itself. And my last comment is around LinkedIn. It is the greatest gift that you'll ever receive, to compress the amount of time it takes to have a network, use a network, and enjoy a network. There's never going to be anything like it. It's far too large. I've been on it since it beta launched in 03, and be thankful that you can take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Well, Scott, thank you so much. I know time is precious, so thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time and an hour of our audience's time to learn about this topic, to see it in a different way, and to learn about how we can connect better with one another and lead to, like I said in the beginning, just great opportunities and other things. So I will meet you backstage to say goodbye very quickly, and I will go full screen to just close out the call. But thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining me. Now, just a quick reminder, after August 1st, I'm going to be taking a hiatus. The hiatus, as I'm saying it now, is going to be until October. I don't know if I'll stick to that. I know how I like to say I'm going to take time off from podcasting, and then I don't. But I really, really have to work on 2 pack outs, another work trip, and of course, moving stateside. So those are all very busy things that'll be taking place in August and September. So I think I will take that time off. So August 1st will be the last episode of season 2, and I will be rolling into season 3 in October. But as I always say to close out these calls, thank you so much for joining us. If you're joining us live, if you're not, thank you for listening. If you're listening, thank you for subscribing on YouTube if you'd like to join us that way. But thank you. And as I always close out the call, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a wonderful evening. Bye bye now.